were But this is not what we are going to talk about, at least not for the first hour or so. Because until a couple of years ago, I thought that the World Trade Center were the two towers. But the World Trade Center was the center. It consisted of 7 buildings in total. And they have numbered, the North Tower has number 1. The South Tower is number 2. Number 3, the Marriott Hotel, is about 22 stories lining the back. Number 4, number 5, and number 6 were relatively small buildings. But World Trade Center 7, which is located here on the other side of a little street called Vesey Street, with a huge building. This is a photograph of the same area, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Building 7, and you have Vesey Street here. Building 7 was a more younger building. It was finished in 1987 to a height of 186 meters, 47 stories, with a ground plan the size of a little less than a soccer field. The distance from the North Tower was a little more than 100 meters. And this is as it presented itself at the time, in between the two impacts. You see the North Tower was hit, the South Tower has not been hit yet. And you see the facade, the face, covered with brown marble. And it was quite an imposing building. Now the tenants in Building 7, there were some commercial companies, of course, which we should not bother about. The most dominant was Salomon Smith and Barney, who occupied the upper 20 stories, floors. So sometimes the building is called the Salomon Building, and BBC broadcast is called the Salomon Building. But the governmental agencies are more interesting. The Department of Defense had offices in the building, so had the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. CIA had their New York undercover headquarters in the building. It wasn't revealed before 3 days after 9/11. Secret Service has the biggest office outside of Washington, D.C. And as you probably know, Secret Service is quite an important body in the American power system, as they take over power. If you do not know where the president or the vice president is, it's automatically Secret Service who decides. And they can also decide where the president and the vice president is supposed to be, and they will rule whatever decision they might take themselves. The Securities and Exchange Commission is maybe interesting in this connection. It is a body which deals with everything about corruption and fraud in the corporate America. And at that time, they had between 3,000 and 4,000 unsolved cases in their offices. And we should see a little while what happened to them. And on top of that, on the 23rd floor, there was an official of emergency management. I'm not going to that. We don't have time to go into these details. Now our timeline moves to 20 minutes past 5 in the afternoon, where this thing happened. Yeah, 7 hours after the collapse of the North Tower, Building 7 went down just like that. I have the same event in 2 other recordings. This is taken down West Broadway Street, and where you get an impression actually how big, enormous the building was, to Danish standards at least. And this clip is taken from Midtown Manhattan, and if you listen carefully, this is Dan Rather.
Amazing, incredible picture work. For the third time today, reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen in Martian television before. Our building was deliberately destroyed by world-class gunmen to knock it down. And
Yeah, this was done rather, and as you probably know, he served as news anchor on CBS for 40 years, but he went into retirement very fast after 9/11. Now, Building-7 collapsed into a tiny pile, you can see here, about 2 stories high, 20 meters, and there's barely a scratch on the buildings surrounding this little square. Maybe a chunk was bitten off of this house here. This is the same event picture taken from the south. Maybe there's some damage. There is some damage here, small damage. In the facades of the building here, the whole building is collapsing into its own footprint. And this is quite an impressive feat, but you see nothing is left except for the steel frame, which we'll return to later on. And I throw in this picture just to emphasize how special it is. It can actually hit its own footprint. That's pretty far down here. This is a car, okay? This enormous building collapses vertically into its own footprint. We call this phenomenon an implosion. And this is the opposite of an explosion. We all know when the pressure in some container is too high, it goes in all directions. Now imagine that if you had lungs like Superman, and you can suck out all the air in a can, soda can, and it will go, it will collapse into itself. This is an implosion. And this is what happened to Building-7. All the interior went down first, and then the outer panels kind of fold in on top of that. Quite neatly. Now, when I started looking into this and discussed this with my friends, some say, well, it's no surprise. You have 300 tons of tower, which is collapsing just nearby, and so maybe the ground was shaking, okay, and the foundation of Building-7 was destroyed, so it collapsed afterwards. But my response would you expect this to happen with 7 hours delay? Well, maybe not. And furthermore, how does a house look like when you actually destroy the foundation? Now this you can see in earthquakes. This is not very happy pictures, but it looks quite differently. These pictures are from Taiwan and from Kobe, Japan, and from Korea. And this I thrown in because what obviously was happened here in this earthquake is one column of this building failed. And what happens then? The building just sits like that. You'll need this experience later on. Do these pictures resemble what Building-7 is doing? No, this is different, isn't it? Now, one may speculate, people have speculated, how fast did Building-7 go down? And there is a brilliant American physicist called David Chandler, physics teacher, who has taken the effort actually to track frame by frame. The last video I showed you, there are 30 frames in a second. And this is the same video. And he is following what is the northwest corner here, frame by frame, with software, all the way down. And here is halfway down. And I have to throw in some physics here, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't hurt. So, and here, if you plot the velocity, the speed versus time, you'll get this straight line here, and it's going downwards because the building is going down. So we're going towards negative values here of the speed, This is the time in seconds. Now, the lesson here is that the speed is increasing constantly. This is a straight line.